I'm Stephen Griffiths, the university's commercialisation solicitor. I'm presenting a series of talks designed to help academics and consultants, when faced with the prospect of a spin-out company, make sense of what might be a complicated area. To help me with this, I'd like to introduce you to Simon Concannon and Emma Marsden of Walker Morris.
Thank you for that, Stephen. I think the message that I really want to get across today is that it's very important that the issue of tax efficiency and the structure that you use is considered at a very early stage.
So can we just have a look at it from the academic's point of view, Simon? If I was an academic at the university, I would be an employee and I would be receiving a salary. So if I became involved in a spin-out company, would I continue to be paid in the same way?
You certainly could continue to be paid a salary, and clearly there are many advantages to receiving a salary. But from a tax point of view, salaries are not terribly tax efficient.
Right. Is that because the rates of income tax are higher than other forms of tax?
Indeed, the income tax rates in the UK are very high for salaries at the high end. Indeed, if one is earning over £150,000 a year, under the current tax regime, with PAYE and national insurance, one can be effectively paying tax at the rate of 52%. Even at lower salaries, tax rates are over 40%, and clearly that is a significant slice of the income which goes to the taxman.
Yes, so if I was continuing to receive a salary and maybe a bonus, then I'll be paying quite a lot of tax on that by the sounds of it.
You would indeed, and actually one of the reasons for considering tax efficiency at an early stage is that it is far more efficient to take more of your benefit from the spin-out company in the form of capital rather than income.
So if I'm not going to take a salary, or not just take remuneration in the form of salary, what can I do instead?
Well, really, the key benefits are if you take a shareholding or indeed potentially options in the company. Right. The benefit of holding shares is that on a subsequent sale of the shares, you would be subject to capital gains tax rather than income tax.
And the rate of capital gains tax is more beneficial from my point of view? Far
more beneficial. The rate of capital gains tax is currently 28%, and indeed, provided certain conditions are met, you can potentially have a tax rate of only 10%, and in the UK at the moment that is essentially the best form of tax you can have.
Right, so by the sounds of it, holding shares or maybe having options is the best option as an academic.
Indeed.
Okay. I'm not terribly comfortable with the idea of holding shares. I'd rather just focus on my work, which is what I'm good at. How can I get around that problem?
Indeed. Well, first of all, owning shares itself is a naturally passive activity, so you don't need to, for example, have voting rights or indeed get involved in voting on those shares. Right. But if owning shares itself is something you feel uncomfortable with, you can have share options. And share options mean that you do not have the shares at the moment. You would acquire the shares essentially immediately before any subsequent sale of the spin-out company.
I see. So I wouldn't get any voting rights as such at that until I do something with those share options.
Correct. You wouldn't have any voting rights and you wouldn't have any responsibilities in relation to the company until such time as the options were exercised, which would typically be before fundamentally an exit event for the sale of that company.
Okay. So why don't I just have share options and no shares? Is that a possible option?
It is a consideration. The holding of options is not quite as tax beneficial as the holding of shares. In particular, what one would try to do was get the company within what's known as the Enterprise Management Incentive Scheme, or the EMI scheme, because there are certainly significant tax benefits for options which fall within that regime. But whilst you would still be paying capital gains tax at the end of the day, the tax rate would be at a higher 28%, and you would not benefit under that regime for the lower 10% tax rate. which if you structured it properly from the beginning, you could actually get your shareholding to be within the 10% tax rate.
Okay. So is that the only type of option that you'd be able to take as an academic, and does it naturally arise over a period of time?
It's not the only type of option. There are a range of different options available, all of which have different tax treatments and which indeed could be subject to things like performance criteria or milestones. But EMI options are certainly, from a tax perspective, the optimum solution if one is to go down the option route.
I see. So I think what we're saying in conclusion is that if I was an academic, the best course is to try and get most of my remuneration out of the income tax regime and into capital gains tax.
Absolutely, and as I said at the beginning, the key message here is the sooner that you look at what you can do from a tax efficiency perspective, the better, because the sooner you do it, you can deal with the valuation issues at an early stage and you can have everything in place so that you can then get on with the important job of building the business.
Okay, thank you. I think that covered quite a lot of ground there, lots of things to think about, but that's been very helpful.
Thank you very much.